Today we did filming of an Anterior Path, which is a new procedure for total hip arthroplasty. You can still do whatever you normally do with the direct anterior. You don't have to change your practice around to use this. And I think that's a real big benefit. And I think if surgeons that want to try it, if they follow the technique and really hone their skills, the first few cases, I think they'll have it in no trouble. So first we're going to start out with some standard landmarks. The first thing is going to mark out is going to be the ASIS, marked here with our blue dot. The second landmark that we want to get is the greater trochanter, which we've marked out here with a secondary blue dot. And then I usually mark the incision out using fluoro because these landmarks are important, and it's really important to get the right angle and the right proximal and distal position for the bikini-based incision. So the first picture that we want to take is just a straight AP, and I want my mark to be at the tip of the greater troch, which you can see that it is. And I typically will draw or imagine a line from the tip of the troch towards the inguinal crease, which we've drawn here. The second line that I want to get is really the angle and the location of where our incision is going to be. And so I take another picture here. Take a shot there again, please. So this picture here is what I'm looking for is my osteotomy line, which is going to be exactly in line, or just the incision will be just distal to this mark. You do not want to make the incision in a more flat or more horizontal way, and you don't want to make it more proximal than where your osteotomy would be. That can lead to some difficulties when you're preparing or making the femoral neck cut. So once I have this shot and I have my angle, I'll make a mark there. Then I'm going to go back to the line that I used for my greater troch, and I want this to be roughly centered or at the junction of the middle and medial thirds of this incision line. Our safety line, which we have, is going to be from basically the medial superior pole of the patella, and we'd imagine a line going straight up from there directly towards the pelvis, and we don't really want to stray. So this I've just drawn here is our medial safety line. We don't want to stray very far medial to that. Okay, the neurovascular bundle is quite a ways away, but it's really just a reminder line for us not to go medial with our incision. The incision length can be dictated obviously by the size of the patient and the planned size for the implants. Typically, it's usually about 3 to 4 finger breadths on my hand, or about 3 to 4 inches. So when we do the incision, the skin in this area of the groin is very thin, and so important early on when you start is to start putting a retention suture just at the medial aspect right here of this incision, just to prevent it from splitting. And keep in mind that while we're doing a bikini-based incision, the actual interval that we're going to be using is identical to a standard direct anterior approach. So we're going to be using a Smith-Peet interval. So the only thing that's going to change is just what the incision looks like, and we'll see once we get in there, it's going to be very familiar for a direct anterior surgeon. When you make the incision, don't start looking immediately and say, where's my interval? Get through the first layer of fat and identify the tensor fascia lata. Once you've done that, then you're basically just doing a standard direct anterior approach. So the only thing that's really a little bit different at the beginning is that first fatty layer sometimes doesn't look exactly like it does through a direct anterior. But once you wipe that part away with your incision in a good position, you then are going to make your incision through the fascia lata, identify your interval, and then you're basically doing a direct anterior, which surgeons have done for years without any issue. So the stay stitch is something that obviously is optional, but I think it's of a benefit. So we put one single umbilical stitch that will come out at the end, but it's just to stop any medial extension of the incision if there's any extra pulling on the retractors of the skin. What we're looking for is the interval between the TFL and sartorius. When you make the incision through the skin, the first layer you encounter some fat. You may encounter some early subcutaneous branches of the lateral nerve. Preserve those as best that we can. And our next level that we're going to be looking for is the fascia of the TFL. And so the best way to identify that, in my opinion, is just by looking for the fibers in the direction that they're going to be running. They run in a characteristic way. They run in a lateral-based way, and the sartorius runs in the opposite way. So once we use our little sponge, what I do is just kind of elevate some of the fat off until I can see the fibers of tensor fascia lata. And they're right here. I can see that these are running in this direction, so that's what I want to see. Sartorius is running in this direction. So I know that the interval is going to be right in this area where my finger basically is poking. So the first thing I do is take a blade. Could I have a knife, please? And I'm going to make an incision in the tensor fascia lata fascia. This is a patient that has a little bit of an extra pannus or a little bit of extra weight in their belly, which through a traditional or direct anterior approach may lead to wound healing problems. And I think that's the first benefit that we really have seen with Anterior Path, is that because of the bikini incision or the different location for the incision, we're seeing much less wound healing complications, and the wounds seem to heal in a much more cosmetic and rapid fashion. The second thing is that it allows us to do patients that maybe otherwise would not qualify for an anterior approach because of their body habitus. So because we can do that incision in line of the groin, that's going to heal more readily. We don't have to worry about the proximal gapping that we may see in a bigger patient. It increases the number of patients that can benefit from an anterior-based procedure. I have the fascia of TFL here. It's in my Alice clamp. I'm going to use my finger and just tease that muscle away to find the interval between sartorius and TFL. Once I feel like I'm in that interval, which I've popped into here, you can move up and down, and that will get you perfectly into the Smith-Peet interval. And now at this point, essentially looks just like a regular direct anterior approach. The difference is the incision. When we're here, we're in the same interval that we're always in. So I'm going to retract TFL laterally. I'm going to take our sartorius over medially. And at this point, I'm going to be in the interval and looking for my vessels of the ascending branches from the lateral circumflex vessels. These typically will arise in the more distal aspect of this incision or this approach, whereas in a typical DA you might find them more in the middle. We're now in the interval between TFL, which is behind this retractor, and sartorius behind this retractor, and this is where we could encounter the branches from the ascending branches of the lateral circumflex artery. In a traditional DA approach, you usually find those in the mid part of our incision. Keep in mind that because we're a little bit more proximal, they can be a little bit more distal in your field here. So beware that you're probably not going to find them here. You most likely will find them down here. At this point, I'm going to start getting through those vessels. I'm going to find them and cauterize them. And what I'm looking for here is basically the fat that's overlying the anterior aspect of the capsule. And I'll keep going down and teasing the fat away until I get right down onto the anterior capsule. And I'm going to start feeling with my finger in a direction towards the opposite thigh for the femoral neck. I put the retractor inferiorly first. Can I have a cobra retractor, please? I'm down onto the anterior aspect of the capsule. I can see that. And I've placed this cobra retractor around the inferior femoral neck. My next step is that I'm going to identify the rectus muscle. So this is the rectus muscle lying directly on the anterior aspect of the capsule. And I'm going to elevate that off. So I want to be on this lateral edge of the muscle. And I just use bovine, I tease through the fascia. We're going to elevate that directly off the capsule. I think it's important to do this carefully. Patients that we do a really good job on this seem to have much less pain. It also makes the surgery a lot easier if you get rectus elevated nice and cleanly. And then take a cob retractor, and with the cob, I use this to basically just tease rectus up and off the capsule. And for most people, this is probably a pretty standard step to elevate this muscle up and off the capsule. So any standard anterior retractor can be used, because at this point, we're really just doing a standard anterior approach. So we slide this over. Get you to hold that one, Danny. The next release I need to do is I need to get a retractor out on the lateral aspect or around the superior neck. And so I'm going to make sure that all my rectus is released, which it is. And I'm going to look for my superior part of my neck here. Do you have another cobra retractor, please? At this point, we have our 3 retractors placed. So I have one retractor anteriorly that's holding rectus back. I have our inferior retractor that's around the inferior femoral neck, and we're around the superior neck. I do a capsulectomy, so I'm going to take the capsule out. You don't need to do that. You can obviously do the capsulotomy. I would suggest you do the surgery just the way that you do a regular anterior approach, because at this point, everything is going to be very much the same. So I make an incision down along the femoral neck, looking to get down to my intertrochanteric line. I'm going to start to see femoral head. So at this point, we've completed the capsulectomy, and I've moved our inferior retractor around the inferior neck, superior around the superior neck. Femoral head is up here. We're still holding rectus back. And this is the part where we're going to be ready to do our osteotomy. So initially, when we talked about the incision placement, We got to remember that it's important not to make this too proximal, because as you make this proximal, it's going to be harder and harder for us to identify the osteotomy site. So just keep that in mind when you mark out your incision. If you're going to err a little bit distal, and it'll make the procedure a little bit easier for you. Once I basically have gone in, identified, done my capsulectomy, I have good exposure of the femoral neck. I think another key point is making sure that you make your osteotomy at the right level. So the tendency, because our incision is a little bit higher, is that you can make long femoral neck cuts. And long femoral neck cuts, while they seem like it's making the surgery easier, in actual fact, they're handcuffing you, because you'll end up probably putting your stem in a bad position. So I think it's important when you first start out, really use the fluoro to identify where your osteotomy should be, because you are looking at this through a slightly higher position. And we have a very good view of the femoral neck here. And I make the mark under fluoro. You don't need to do that, but I like to take a fluoro shot just to ensure that we're at the right height. So I just put my bovie inside. Come in and give us the AP shot of the hip. So right there is probably about a rough level for our osteotomy. I think that looks good above the lesser. Obviously you want to confirm that with your templating, and then you can decide on the angle that you want for the osteotomy site. So we've marked out our femoral osteotomy under fluoro, and then with the bovie in here, I'm going to use a narrow saw blade just because of the distance between these two retractors around the femoral neck, and the excursion of a big blade can sometimes be a little trouble. And then I use a napkin ring to help us get the cut out. So the first cut is going to be along my osteotomy line. And then I'd make a second osteotomy just above that in form of a napkin ring, just about a half inch. A little bit of traction can sometimes help you grab the napkin ring. Corkscrew is going to be next.
This one popped.
Okay. So with the corkscrew, I'm going to aim for the cut surface of the femoral head. Put that in place. Advance it. Basically use it as a joystick. Can I have a T-handle? The maneuver to get femoral head out can either be up and down, but you don't want to lever laterally, because that can damage the tensor fascia lata. And we're going to pop our femoral head out. So once we have the head out, the next step is our acetabular exposure. So I use two retractors for that. The first retractor is going to be what's called our C retractor. You really can use any anterior retractor that you normally do. You put this into the acetabulum, pop up over the anterior lip, advance it, and I pass it over to our assistant. The second retractor, I use a cobra retractor, and this is being done around the posterior aspect of the acetabulum to hold the femur posteriorly. We're just basically going to remove any of the diseased labrum. You can remove osteophytes at this point. You can go ahead and work and take out ligamentum teres, whatever you feel appropriate at this point. So I just want to highlight how good the view of the acetabulum can be through the bikini incision. So we really can see everything that we need to see, and we want to make sure that we're all cleared, our retractor's in a good position, because at this point we're going to start preparing for our cannula placement. This is the outrigger that's been designed for the anterior path. And basically what this is going to do is going to allow us to pass the cannula through this part, through the vastus muscle, and it's going to then enter through here and be centered in the acetabulum. You slide it into the acetabulum, and you'll feel it pop into the joint itself. And at this point, I'm going to ask our fluoro to come in. You want to get a really good fluoro shot so that your acetabulum is directly centered in your screen, so you don't have any parallax, so that you have a true AP of the hip. So at this point, what I'm doing is basically just moving my hand around to try to get the acetabular shell that I've placed. So picture roughly where I would want my cup to sit. This is an important part of the case because where we place this cannula is going to basically help us in our acetabular positioning. So you obviously don't want to place your cannula picture there. You wouldn't want to place your cannula with your shell sitting like that. And you would not want to place your cannula with your shell sitting like this. Got it. So you want to get it into a position that you think is anatomic of where that acetabulum component is going to be, and then that is where you're going to pass the cannula. When we pass the cannula has a trocar, which is going to help us introduce it. Okay, it's blunt, but it will push through the soft tissue quite easily. And then the cannula is a sleeve that's going to slide on the trocar. Okay. From a safety standpoint, we want to make sure that the toes are pointed directly up and are not externally rotated. Okay. Any external rotation can bring the neurovascular bundle closer to where we pass this cannula. It's still a very far away, but in order to minimize any risk, make sure that you take a conscious check of the toes and that those are pointed up in a neutral position. So at this point, I take the cannula and I'm going to pass it onto the hip, mark roughly where my stab incision is going to go, make a little stab in the tissue, just through the fascia layer, knife back. And at this point, you can pass the cannula directly through, and you can visualize it going right into the acetabular component. And you can also visually look in, and you can definitely see that the trocar is entered into the center of the acetabular shell. We can remove the trocar. The cannula will stay where it is. Turn our hand up, and we can remove the acetabular component. In all honesty, the surgery in itself that part is nearly done. And to be honest with you, I think we found that using the anterior-based approach with the cannula is actually much easier than using a cannula from a posterior approach. It's less technically demanding, and for anterior surgeons to come over to be an anterior-based or an anterior path surgeon, they can do so very readily. But if you're routinely doing anterior approach, using the anterior path really is, in all honesty, about a handful of cases learning curve. Now we have our cannulas placed in position. It's typically through the vastus muscle. Because we place this under fluoro, the straight line should keep us in line while we ream, so we can minimize our fluoro use, we can increase our OR efficiency, and we have a tremendous view of the acetabulum as we put the reamers in and out. So the shell that we used was a 46, so we'll start with something around that size or slightly smaller. The introducer, or the hook, this is basically just what it is, a very simple instrument. It's a metal hook. It fits into the acetabular reamer basket. Hold it up like this. Can I have the other Cobra retractor back for a second, please? I usually use this Cobra retractor posteriorly as we had it before to hold the femur back. And it can actually act like a slide to help us introduce this reamer basket in and out without damaging any tissue. So the easiest way, I think, is with the reamer pointed up. I advance it in just with a finger to hold it so it doesn't fall off, and I move my hand upwards and then disengage. So once the reamer basket's in place, you can make a decision of whether or not you need to medialize the shell or not. If you do need to medialize it, you can push your finger of the reamer basket in. You can move it to a better angle to medialize directly through the incision. If you don't feel that you need to medialize, then you can just reams directly through the cannula. So we introduce our reamer handle in through the cannula, and as you can see, it engages very easily into the shell or the reamer basket. You want to try to keep as much in line as you can. The cannula does have a little bit of freedom to it, but because we place this under fluoro in good position, we know that if we stay in line with our reamer, that our reaming should be in an appropriate and concentric position that we're desiring. And then we can move up to the next size. So similarly with the hook, I just put the hook in. I turn my hand backwards, so counterclockwise on this side, and then we remove the shell. Next one up. So once again, this goes onto the hook. Reamer basket is up, slides down this retractor. Once we engage into the acetabulum, then we do a clockwise maneuver and remove it. And we just continue on until we reach the correct size for the reamer. So once you get going with this and get more comfortable with technique, this becomes very proficient, and you essentially can just, we even sometimes just leave the reamer handle in and remove it like this, so the OR efficiency is really, really improved. And because we have such a good view of the acetabulum, we don't need to take a lot of fluoro. At this point, we've completed the reaming, and we have our three instruments to prepare. Usually the tech will do this for us, but for purposes of illustration, we have our acetabular shell. This is a size 48. This is a prime cup, has 3 holes. a biofoam ingrowth surface, and 12 tabs. The 48 shell accepts a 32 head. If you get to a 50, you can make the decision if you want a 32 or a 36 head. This is the threaded cup adapter, and it's going to screw into the center hole where the manhole typically would go. And this is our acetabular or shell impactor. And so we put these two together, screw them down. We want to make this about finger tight. If you make it too tight, then you can have the worry, or we'll have the worry that we could cause this to cold weld as we impact the shell. So tell your tech that you want to go to about a finger tightness. So at this point, we're going to place our acetabular component. A couple key points here. This is the inserter that we use to put the shell in, and it's the same outrigger that we had when we placed the cannula. It just has the outrigger arm removed. It fits nicely onto the threaded adapter. Well, one thing to keep in mind, or two things actually. This is it's a magnet, and so we don't want to drop it just like the reamer baskets, so keep it up. And secondly, it can spin. So we want to be mindful of where our holes are going as we engage the cup into the acetabulum. So similar to like the reamer baskets, I should just put one finger on top, use my Cobra as a slide, and I wiggle this down. I basically just advance it down into the acetabulum. You can wiggle a little bit if you need to. And then once it engages, I want to be mindful where those screw holes are. And similarly like we did with the basket, I raise my hand forward, and that should lock into a rough place of where I want the acetabulum to sit. At this point, I typically take a shot with fluoro to confirm my positioning. I can make slight changes to the positioning of the acetabulum at this point by engaging the impaction handle through the cannula and simply moving in any which way that I would want. The cannula itself is going to be our guide, and once again, we don't want to put all that tension through the skin because we took our time to place that, so this should be in an optimal position when it's sitting just as it is right here. So picture there, please. So I think that shell looks to me like it's going to go in a fairly good position. At this point, I can get a mallet and advance the acetabulum. When I hear my pitch change, believe that I'm seated, take a couple other taps. Picture again. And I think that's in very good position based on our anatomic landmarks. One of the big advantages of the anterior path and the cannula is that it allows us to use everything, or we're allowed to do everything inline. So whenever you use inline impaction, inline reaming, you're much more accurate, and you have to use less force to get the instruments and to get the components where you want them. So as you can see, you don't have to hit very hard. The cannula kind of keeps you in line. Using the cannula really pays dividends because we can just move more rapidly through the other parts that tend to hold us up. So for instance, a regular direct anterior, using offset reamers, it can be difficult to get those reamers in and out. It takes a little bit of extra maneuvering. But once you get the simple one sort of motion maneuver of putting the reamer basket in, putting the cup in, then you really just rapidly go through the procedure. I'm going to disengage the threaded cup adapter. Can I have your mallet back, please, John? And this is why we don't want to put this on too tight. It's a counterclockwise turn. We reverse this back off, and we'll disengage from the threads. So at this point, our acetabular component has been placed. I've confirmed our position on fluoro. I'm happy where it is. You can either go ahead and place your liner, or if you'd like to place a screw, you can do that as well. And this similarly can be done through the cannula. There's our drill guide or drill sleeve will enter in through the cannula itself and directly into the screw holes within the cup. There's about 8 degrees of freedom to engage the hole. And one thing to keep in mind is that depending on the size of the patient, the cannula can be sticking out for longer or shorter. And so if you need to, you can always advance the cannula a little bit so that you can maintain control of the drill sleeve itself as you drill. The drill is calibrated to give you an idea of what the appropriate depth or length, the appropriate length of the screw should be. Once you have drilled and you've got your appropriate depth and your length of screw that you've asked for, this can be placed directly through the cannula and into the acetabular shell without any complication. At this point, we're going to place our acetabular liner. So the liner itself has 12 tabs. This is a trial. It has 6. And what we do, just like we had done with the reamer baskets, you just engage this through, push it through with your finger. I usually use a freer to make sure that the tabs are lined up. And I'm going to use our impaction ball, which would obviously be the same size. So in this case, a 32. Introduce this with a coker. And I ask for our impaction handle. And this once again goes through the cannula, engages into the center of the ball, and a mallet. And we simply tap this to engage it. Remove our impaction handle, coker. Okay. Remove our ball. I usually take one final shot at this point. Pull back a little bit. Got there. Take one final picture there. I would save that on my acetabular if you desire. And I can see that the cannula is still in position. Remove it. At this point, we've completed our acetabular placement, and we're going to move on to the femur. So as you can see, incision is quite small. This is approximately about 3 inches in length. We have a good interval here between sartorius tensorfasciolata. And most importantly, the skin has remained in really good position and in really good condition. So what I'm going to do here is use a bone hook. I'm going to enter this in, put it into the cut surface of the femur, palpate that, and I pull laterally to basically just make sure that my femur is not going to get engaged on the cup. So I'll ask my tech, please externally rotate slightly for the foot. I'm using a HANA table here, no hook yet. So externally rotate, please. That's good there, thank you. And you can drop the foot down a little bit. And I usually drop this down probably about halfway, stop. As I feel the structures posteriorly getting a little bit tighter that I might want to release, I ask them to stop, they lock it. And at this point I'm going to place our femoral retractors. You should be using whatever retractors you typically use for a regular, your standard direct anterior hip. I use this as a Microport based retractor. It has a nice lip that protects the muscle. I actually use the opposite side. So this is a right, but we're doing a left hip. And so I'll place this around what is essentially the posterior neck. And I take a second retractor, which is basically just a bent Homan. And I'm going to put this a little bit more proximally to hold vastus back and allow me to identify my piriformis fossa. So at this point, our leg has been dropped about halfway, not yet done any releasing. And you can see because of the bikini incision and a little bit more of a proximal exposure, we have a very good view of the cut surface of the femur. This is going to help us with our femoral preparation, but you still need to do your routine femoral releases. So whatever you would normally do for your retractor placement and your releases, this is the time to do that. You can do this on table, off table. As I said before, we are on table with no hook. I'm going to work through our standard serofemoral releases. I'm going to make sure that all the capsule is out of the way. I'm going to identify our small fat layer that we usually encounter. And I'm working to just release some of that posterior capsule, some of that superior capsule, so that we'll be able to drop the femur nice and easily. Typically, you don't need to release piriformis. You definitely don't need to release obturator externus. And you want to feel right back onto the piriformis fossa. If you do feel that it's tight there, you can release a little bit of piriformis to give you a little bit of extra elevation. So, can you drop the leg now, please? Just going to clear this out. Okay, so at this point, we're going to start preparing the femur. So I've done all my releases. I feel like I have a very good view of the proximal femoral exposure. So what we can see here is that we've done our femoral releases. I've identified the femoral canal. And at this point, I'm going to use our box osteotome. I have a double offset handle. You can use double or single with this system. For this particular case, there's a little bit of an extra pannus, so I think a single will be beneficial. Advance it down. You have a rongeur, please? Thank you. And I use a rongeur to basically just bite any little bit of hard bone that's left over. And a curved curette, please. An instrument that I found very useful is basically a curette. It's just got a slight curve on it. And it really helps engage into the canal quite easily. And we can start to remove this bone to make place for our broach. I think for any anterior approach, it's important to make sure that you get nice and lateral to start. One of the errors early on, whether it's a standard DA or any modification of it, is that stems can be put in varus, and historically I think that was one of the problems to causing complications. So be really cognizant to try to lateralize your entry point, so that will help you both in appropriate sizing of the stem and also minimize any risk for fracture. So I think here it's really important to highlight a couple things. First, the lack of tension that we have on the wound. So we've exposed our femur, we've done our releases, we have our standard retractors in place, but even in this bigger patient, we still have no tension on the skin whatsoever. So that's really important for wound healing. You see all the time people that have wound breakdown because surgeons are making incisions small and then just basically pulling essentially on the skin. And those skin edges, they don't like that. They die and they don't heal well. So if we can eliminate the tension that we have to put on the skin to get our visualization or to get our implants in, well, that's a perfect scenario. And that's what Anterior Path really helps us do. So we decrease that risk and that tension on the skin. I have a nice view of our lateral side of the femur, and so we know that we've broached out appropriately or curetted out appropriately there, so that we're going to be nice and lateral. We have a good view down here of our calcar to make sure that we're not at risk for any sort of crack or anything like that. And again, this is done with just 2 retractors and very little tension. When you have your assistant lean into the femur a little bit, you can get an even better view to give you more straight line impaction. And that's another advantage of doing this through a bikini incision. We now are in a position where we can begin our broaching. We're going to use our TL2 stem, and it's once again with a double offset. You can use a single, but just based on this patient's anatomy, I think double's better. It engages very nicely up and around with very little tension in the soft tissue. Advance it with mallet right to our cut surface, and we serially broach up to the appropriate size. Things to highlight here are that because of the bikini incision, once again, no tension on the skin, and we can stay away from getting that raspy marks that we often get when people have difficulty in their femoral exposure with a traditional anterior approach. And in someone with this patient's size, especially with this pannus, not having the incision curve up underneath is going to be very important in terms of wound healing. So once again, watch the skin incision, engage the broach in, and I start to advance it. Next one up. So this is a size number 1. Most likely this patient will get to a 2. That would be the correct size. So again, I just want to highlight that this is just like you would normally do in your regular anterior approach. The only difference that you may notice is that your view of the femur is slightly enhanced, or should be enhanced, because of the more inline view that we have. Go one more actually, please. Number 3. So at this point we've completed our broaching. I feel we have good rotational stability of the broach. As you can see, very good view of the broach entered in the femur. At this point we can place our trial neck, which comes in a varus or standard option, and a 32 ball. Simply engage those and place into the broach. We have all our trial components placed. We're going to relocate the hip. So if you can bring the hip over, please, and up. That's perfect there. Lock that. A little bit of traction, an internal rotation, and let it off. Perfect. And so the hip now is back in joint. If at this point you would check your stability, you can go ahead and do that just like you normally would. You can disengage the boot. I typically just actually rotate the foot and make sure that we're not impinging anywhere, because obviously anterior dislocation is our risk. And this feels like it has pretty good tension. At this point I take a final fluoro shot of my trials. I want to make sure that I have appropriate size, appropriate position, which I believe that we do. I think everything went really well. Really happy with what the final implants look like and their positioning. We had very good stability at the end. We can easily do a total hip skin to skin, in 45 minutes, 40 minutes. And that's not with rushing. It's just because the procedure just allows you to just be more efficient, and you can be more confident where your components are going. As a general rule, we probably do about 80% of patients same day discharge. I think anterior approach has definitely revolutionized that. So for patient outcomes, for ease in the operating room, for marketability, these are all benefits that you can have by using the anterior path.